iRacing improving their physics and making their time model more realistic is really dangerous for iRacing, and in this video I'm going to explain why. Thank you for subscribing and drinking tea, and also clicking that like button twice. Really appreciate it. Also, before I forget, check out our Patreon. You can join it for free if you want to. It's a great way to stay in touch with us outside of the different platforms. We're also uploading force feedback profiles there and other stuff like our iRacing voice chat remixes, which are the best. They're not AI made, they're handmade. So thank you for that, guys. On with the video. So if you're paying attention, iRacing announced that they're doing quite substantial time model changes next year, and a lot of this is based on the fact that they've had a lot of real world driver feedback. Maybe they've seen a few YouTubers and live streamers complain about the nature of their tyres over the limit. I don't know any that do that at all, but obviously they have the data and they are obviously not idiots. They know how cars drive, so they know that their existing tyre model really has some substantial issues when it comes to how cars are at the limit. Now that's actually really awesome. I think that they're taking the data, taking the feedback and trying to improve things. It's what you want a developer to do, and you have to keep in mind that driving simulators are bloody complicated and development is bloody complicated, especially real-time physics development. You'd have to be an idiot to work in the games industry, and you'd have to be an even bigger idiot to work in the sim racing games industry. So great that they're doing stuff from my personal view. However, there is a really big risk and danger with this, and that is that a large, probably majority of iRacers don't actually think that there is an issue with the current physics in iRacing, in part due to iRacing's marketing. You have to remember a key thing about iRacing.
Hello, and welcome to iRacing. iRacing is the most advanced and comprehensive racing simulation software in the world. It's also the most realistic.
But also, separate to what's realistic, what isn't realistic, what's good or bad necessarily, what happens with video games is that when people play them for a long amount of time, they learn how to play those video games and they get better at them. If you then change the video game, especially a core mechanic of a video game, even minutely, it really upsets people because you're forcing them to relearn what they already learnt. And you notice this being an issue in really subtle ways, like even going from Counter-Strike Go to Counter-Strike 2, or even CS 1.3 to the newer versions of Counter-Strike, or different versions of Call of Duty, different versions of Team Fortress, Quake. I'm old, these are my examples. But those differences, in Counter-Strike for example, they literally copied the game code over, but it's a different engine, so it's slightly different. And that really threw a lot of people off and really upset a lot of people. Within the space of sim racing, more recently, I think we've seen changes in ACC that a lot of players wouldn't notice, but for the hardcore players, the most invested and the people spending the most amount of time really keeping a game going, those changes actually put a lot of people off. And with ACC, you've seen a lot of backlash with the more recent updates. And I think a large part of that is because with a lot of driving simulators, a lot of players of driving simulators learn a very specific robotic way to drive. And that's not necessarily incorrect. There is a robotic way to drive real cars in many ways up to a certain point. But they learn that, and then if you change that, it's going to ruin all their laptops. It's going to ruin their... I don't like the term muscle memory because I think it's over simplistic, but in a sense, it's going to ruin their muscle memory. It's going to ruin their expectation of what occurs after their inputs. Now, why this is particularly pertinent when it comes to iRacing and its new developments is that they, from what I understand, conversations I've had and what you can see online, I think the new tyre model is actually a really significant tyre model change. It's not just a little tweak here and there, which is what you've seen with lots of the cars in iRacing and updates. They've quite drastically changed different tyres on different cars in the past, But the fundamental meta and approach for iRacing has largely been pretty much the same since the launch, give or take. Whereas this new tyre model should fundamentally change how you drive in iRacing. As I say, if you're not that familiar with iRacing, one of its big issues at the moment is that it drives really well under the limit. Cars have really nice bite. I think downforce and stuff works really quite nice in iRacing. Cars are really responsive. However, as soon as you start loading onto the tyres and pushing the tyres, the surface of the tyre heats up and then the grip just goes. And if you put accelerator, that takes away grip. If you put brake, it takes away grip. If you put steering, it takes away grip. You basically end up in a sort of death slide, and then it takes ages for the tyre temperature to return. Whereas the behaviour that you would expect with a real vehicle, and what you see in a lot of other simulators, is that the tyre will get sloppier if it's pushed and not optimal, but it will come back quite quickly. A little bit of a lock up, come off it quickly, the grip comes back quite quick. Do a bit of a tank slapper. If you're quick enough and you catch it and you settle the car down, you're pretty good. It won't be optimal, but you can drive it off. You could also hold a bit of productive slip, balance that with the steering and the throttle, and it's not going to mean that the tyres just completely die and you lose all your time. You're going to use up you'll wear out the tyres more. You will increase the temperature. They'll do a whole bunch of things, but it's not necessarily death or end of lap time or end of, do you know what I mean? Like you can actually play with the vehicles and hold them and stuff, which with iRacing you're really significantly punished if you actually try and drive in that way. So basically, if they do this new tyre model properly, it will mean that you'll be able to drive iRacing and much more like how you can drive Assetto Corsa 1, Automobilista 1, rFactor 2, LMU, Lift for Speed, like loads of other simulators that allow you to actually get onto the tyres more, purposefully get onto the tyres, and you will also be able to gain time from purposefully pushing the car over the limit or pushing it onto the limit or holding it on the limit more aggressively, which is completely different. A completely different driving style to how you currently have to drive iRacing now. You don't have a choice. As it is right now, you have to drive iRacing under the limit or just getting up to the limit, and that's it. You could maybe roll into a slide and let the car go where it was going to go, but that's about it. So these changes, as I say, are huge to how you would approach driving in iRacing, and I really don't know how the user base is going to respond to it, as I think a majority of them, based off how mental people go when you point out what I've just said, I think a majority of them genuinely think things are pretty much fine, and that the way things are right now is how cars are and how they should be. And even the ambivalent people that don't care, just playing a game and having fun, they will find it probably a really big chore to have to relearn how to actually drive the simulator to get the most out of it, which if you've already put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into a video game, that's a big ask, and a even bigger ask for the people that have spent even more time on it, because they've got even more used to it. They've internalized the physics of the game into their brain, and it's a really enjoyable thing. Once you've learnt something, if you learn how to play an instrument, it's really enjoyable to just have it do what you want it to do. If you learn a piece of software, maybe more people do software than music, but like if you've learnt a piece of software, it's like you're just doing stuff and things happen that you want to happen. It's really satisfying, and I think that's also one of the really enjoyable parts of a racing simulator. Once you've learned to sim, and unfortunately, sadly for me, I've learnt iRacing reasonably well, I can sit there live streaming it for 12 hours and we're in the top 10 or so, in the top split in a lot of cars. Not GT3, we're crap at GT3, but we're driving around F4, Super Formula, and I know what's going to happen. I'm just driving and chatting. It's really satisfying and really fun. So getting rid of that potentially, it's really dangerous. It could really knock off a load of subscribers and players of iRacing. Now, someone pointed out in my chat yesterday, we brought this up in a live stream, of all the games and all the user bases, the one that would be probably receptive to these changes may be iRacing's user base, because at the end of the day, people are playing iRacing for the competition, and maybe it shakes the competition up, and for some people it works out better than others, so maybe that offsets the annoyance, or it'll be worse for some people, better for others, and that offsets things. But also, I think iRacers are probably some of the most abused sim racers. They've already paid a monthly fee, and then they've had to pay a content fee, and then they're subjected to the worst layouts of racetracks possible. They'll have like a nice layout, a really nice racetrack, and they'll run the small version of the track that nobody wants, the random chicane version of the track that makes no sense for the car that's running on it, and the iRacers just accept it. They just take it. Yeah, maybe iRacers will just accept it, and if you've got an authority pointing out that, oh, this is actually better or it's more realistic, here's our evidence. Maybe if iRacing can put out promotional material, that will help. And I do think if you had someone like, if you had a legit Formula 1 driver that's also a sim racer, like Max Verstappen who plays iRacing as well as other sims, if you had him come out and say, oh, this is much bigger improvement, then I think begrudgingly the people that have memorised how to play it well will be like, oh, but Max Verstappen has said it's good, and even though I don't like it, it's me. It's me, it's not the sim. And the argument from authority is ridiculously powerful in sim racing. Even outside of what's realistic or not, people seem to frame what's fun or not based off what an authority is telling them, which is really weird. You should just do what you like and not care. But yeah, so it's super dangerous for iRacing though. I still think it's a big risk for them, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they roll it out. And in some ways, I think if they don't actually do the new time model, pretend that they've done it really different, but it actually ends up being very similar to the current one, might even be better for them. But I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. And as I say, it's something you've noticed with other video games, and then how that applies to driving sims, I think is really fascinating. Let me know what you think in the comment section, guys. I really appreciate, actually, we do have quite a sizable number of viewers on this channel that actually write interesting comments and interesting points. Sadly, there is maybe like 10% of comments that are just people that go, why are you hating on this game? Like iRacing, AMS2, ACC, whatever. It's like they were being critical, it's different. And then just weird insults and stuff. God knows what's going on. But that really is in the minority. So I really do appreciate the actual interesting conversations and interesting comments. It really helps me think about things differently. And that's what I enjoy. It's what I really enjoy about sim racing. I've done sim racing for too many thousands of hours across all the simulators, and I just like thinking about things. I think it's just fun. So yeah, thanks for the interesting comments. If you're boring, just go away. Just don't be boring. At least be funny. That's it really, guys. I've still got my tea to drink here. Well excited. And till the next one, take care. Thanks for watching. Goodbye, everyone.